We all know the devil, the ruler of hell, the charismatic rebel, the ultimate cosmic bad guy. And we know his name, Lucifer. But for centuries, the word Lucifer carried no dark baggage. It was simply a common, lowercase Latin noun. Picture a medieval scriptorium. A scribe bends over an expensive sheet of parchment, carefully copying text. When he writes Lucifer, he isn't summoning a demon. He's just putting a normal word onto a grid, right next to the others. Early Christians actually used the word in a positive context. Read through ancient hymns, and you'll find Lucifer used to signal hope, the end of night, and occasionally even applied directly to Jesus Christ. So if the word started out as completely ordinary, and sometimes holy, how did it become the universal brand name for the Prince of Darkness? To answer that, we have to look up. Originally, the word pointed to a specific, incredibly bright object visible just before dawn, the planet Venus. Because Venus orbits closer to the sun than Earth does, we only ever see it near the sun's glare. It hangs in the western sky at dusk for months, disappears, and then returns in the east just ahead of sunrise. Ancient farmers and skywatchers perceived these as two completely different stars. They assigned them different roles. One closed out the day, and the other acted as a herald, arriving right before the sun to chase away the dark. The ancient Romans needed a word for that dawn herald. They called it Lucifer. Translated directly from Latin, it literally means light bringer. Before it was a theology, and long before it was a character, Lucifer was simply humanity's label for a shiny rock following a predictable orbit. The confusion begins in the ancient Near East. The 14th chapter of the Hebrew book of Isaiah is patient zero. At the time, a Hebrew prophet is writing a political taunt. He is mocking a tyrannical human king, the ruler of Babylon, whose massive, oppressive empire has just collapsed into ruin. To insult this fallen emperor, the prophet uses a specific poetic metaphor. In Hebrew, he calls the king Helel ben Shachar, which translates to the Shining One, Son of Dawn. It's a direct reference to the astronomical behavior of the morning star. The Babylonian king aimed high, thinking he could climb above the other stars, only to be quickly cast down and swallowed by the glare of the sun. This passage was entirely about human politics. It was a taunt aimed at a mortal man, using sky terminology to mock his failed ambition. Fast forward a few centuries. Scholars translate the Hebrew scriptures into Latin to create the standard Bible of the Middle Ages, known as the Vulgate. The translator hits that Hebrew phrase, Shining One, Son of Dawn. To capture the imagery of the morning star, he simply swaps in the standard, everyday Latin word for that exact planet, Lucifer. Here is where the fatal convergence happens. Later readers saw this Latin word in Isaiah and started reading it alongside completely different verses in the New Testament, like the Gospel of Luke describing Satan falling from heaven, or Revelation depicting a dragon cast out. Over time, people stripped the word entirely out of its Babylonian context. They assumed that the entity falling from heaven in the New Testament and the Lucifer falling in Isaiah were the exact same being. By stitching these separate texts together, a mistranslated noun hardened into a title. The Lightbringer became the cosmic enemy. Once the devil accidentally acquired a name, he needed a backstory and a personality to match. That didn't come from ancient scripture. It came from artists. In the 14th century, Dante Alighieri wrote the Inferno. He provided the terrifying geography, freezing Lucifer as a massive, silent, multi-faced giant trapped at the absolute center of hell. But a frozen giant doesn't make for a great conversationalist. 300 years later, the English poet John Milton writes his epic Paradise Lost. Milton gave Lucifer a voice. He wrote him as an articulate, proud, charismatic rebel general with a clear political philosophy, a character who would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. This literary invention is the true birthplace of the devil we recognize today. Poets crafted the complex, rebellious Lucifer of modern culture. As the printing press spread across Europe, English Bible translations began to solidify these cultural assumptions into permanent type. In 1611, the King James Bible was published, becoming the definitive text for the English-speaking world. When translators reached Isaiah 14, Instead of translating the Latin back to morning star, they imported the word directly onto the page. Crucially, they capitalized the L. That single typographical choice permanently transformed a descriptive noun into an immovable divine name in the minds of millions. It is an incredible journey. A word starts out as a literal observation of a planet's orbit in the dawn sky, gets pulled into a politically charged Hebrew taunt aimed at a dead king, mutates through a Latin translation quirk, evolves into an epic literary protagonist, and eventually becomes a global pop culture brand. Sometimes our greatest, most terrifying myths aren't born from ancient cosmic wars or divine revelation. They are just the result of a centuries-long game of translation telephone.